Yes, please. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. Hope everyone is enjoying this shorter 4th of July week. I know I'm coming off vacation last week, so I'm pretty thankful it's already Thursday. As Ryan just said, we really appreciate you guys joining us for this session of Women in Brand Marketing. For those of you who don't know me, I thought I'd start with a little background on myself and Studio71. So I'm actually the SVP of US Sales. And today, as he mentioned, I have the pleasure of chatting with Kimberly Doebereiner. I did get the pronunciation, I think. the group Yay! The Group VP, Future of Advertising, Content, and Brand Communications at P&G. She was also recently promoted, which we'll get into, to also lead Head of Content Innovation, which I think everyone can imagine in this day and age is not an easy task with so many platforms and content out there in the ad space. Before we dive into Kimberly and her background, I thought I would kick things off because not everyone is familiar with Studio71 to give a little glimpse into us as a global media company. We really focus on producing and distributing premium, brand safe content across all video platforms. So we have a content division and they produce thousands of original videos for our owned and operated channels, podcasts, and apps, and also publish about 1,800 partner creator channels globally that generate about 13 billion monthly views across YouTube, connected TVs, and various social media platforms. As a sales team, my team's job is to connect advertisers like P&G with top digital creators for targeted media campaigns, custom branded content, and podcasts. And we're really lucky because we have a really engaged audience, and we're actually the #1 partner for YouTube in terms of minutes viewed. And the content that our talent produces makes up about 10% of online video watched in the US. And I always like to say, while we might not be a household name, our content really is. We're representing some of the biggest digital channels and social stars, from the Soul Publishing, 5 Minute Crafts, and 1, 2, 3, Go, to Tyler Oakley, Naomi Campbell, VAT19, Body2, Fish Fam, et cetera, whether they're posting across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snap, scaling on OTT, or producing great podcasts, we're the engine behind that content and those talent partnerships. So we are lucky enough to actually partner with P&G in both the US and Canada from a media perspective. And I thought I'd kick it over to Kimberly, my fellow Ohioan, as we discovered. And we'd love to get a little background on you and your career to start things off.
Thank you, Kristin. So it is so lovely to be here with all of you. I was listening to the woman before who was a ex-P&G'er as well, and it was fun to hear about how long you stay with the company. So I am one of those that have been with P&G for 31 years. So I am one of those lifers at P&G at this point. I started in brand management. I was there for 8 years before I moved into an expert role focused on brand strategy and communication. And I've spent the next 23 years working across P&G in almost every one of our brands, working with their agencies to make the best possible communication, whether it was Global Gillette, Global Pantene, or currently Tide, Bounty, and Charmin. I have a ton of fun working with these brands and helping these brands to grow. And then more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, heading up the future of advertising for P&G and what that looks like, and how we actually delight consumers more as opposed to annoy consumers with advertising. So that's been my focus, which has led into the world of new ways of thinking about content and storytelling.
Yeah, easy task you got going there. I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about your particular role at P&G, and also like as a woman in brand marketing, from a progression standpoint. Obviously, you've been there a long time, but like, how did you actually choose marketing as your field? And then also, I mean, I know it's a huge one, but what drew you to P&G?
Yeah, I actually was a marketing major at Miami University of Ohio. I always wanted to be in marketing. I was one of those weird people that I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I loved it. I loved the experience I had there at Miami, and I worked with P&G directly. They were one of the clients in one of our class projects. And I got to know a gentleman named Richardson McKinney, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine and pulled me into P&G and ended up interviewing there. So it really was from my experience at Miami. And I love building brands and how they speak and how they talk and connecting with them with consumers. I've always loved it. So it started way back then. And then when I joined P&G, I came into healthcare, and that's where I started. My first 8 years was working across the brands in healthcare, like Crest and Metamucil and Vicks 44.
Well, I love Vicks, and you're also completely opposite of me. I was a finance major, had no idea I would go into advertising. I love math, and now I use it in Excel, but that's about it.
You know what's fun? I'm a math minor because I love problem solving.
Oh,
And
me
there's a
too.
mentality of problem solving that comes with math that I really appreciate.
Funny. I feel like I'm just starting to get into like math with my 6-year-old son, and I'm like, this is it. It's like I can't wait for word problems again. That's so funny.
But I'll say, you asked me and I didn't answer the second part of your question. I just realized is what drew me to P&G. And, I'm an Ohio, born and raised person. And lived very rurally. So Cincinnati was the big city, and P&G was the epitome of the best marketing company. And so that was what drew me, the reputation and what P&G was doing. So that was how I got to P&G. And obviously I've then stayed.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, as I said, a fellow Ohioan, I totally hear you, but like, I mean, it obviously speaks volumes to me, right? Like in this day and age, I feel like people are not so much loyalists to companies, and it's pretty incredible, right? Like that speaks volumes about the culture of the company, and then obviously your passion for the brands. But I think it's really interesting that and amazing that you've been there for,
I will speak to that on why have I been here this long? Like it was like, is it? And I will tell you, it's because I am challenged still today. Like I'm learning today, I'm challenged today. I'm able to lean in on projects and things that I'm passionate about that I believe can help the company. And being able to have that opportunity and give that chance within a company like P&G with brands that P&G has, honestly, I see it as a gift. So I've never felt like I have stopped, that I have not been challenged or, able to like say, what's next? What do I do next? So
Yeah.
I feel very blessed from that standpoint.
Honestly, you should be too, because I feel like not a lot of companies give you that growth. Even the women who were speaking in the last panel, I think they were ending on just about the fact that you want to be able to grow within a company and jump around to different, areas of the world, if that opens up for you, or also just different types of fields within a given company, and the fact that they offer that's pretty awesome.
Right.
I thought, since I just mentioned my 6-year-old, I know we were talking a little bit just about like, being a mom and as a woman, obviously, this being women in brand marketing, like how has being a mom or a woman really influenced how, you do your job on a day-to-day?
Yeah, the first thing that I think everyone goes through, especially when they become a mom, is it prioritizes your life really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like your ability to focus and get done what you need to get done so that you can get home, it just rearranges your priorities in a way that becomes much sharper. It doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's easy to stick to, because it's a constant battle, but it really does align your priorities. And again, I have an amazing, talented husband who chose to stay at home with our kids, which has been, again, a blessing for our family. But it also meant, at least in my household, is there are no gender roles. Like I am the primary wage earner. He was, the PTO president. I actually am the one that coached basketball for my daughter and baseball for my son. And he's actually a very talented singer and theater director on the arts side. So that the way that I see coming to a mom at work does have to do with what's the support system you have around you. Yeah. Whether it's your husband or whether it's the people you need to bring in to help you. Like, I do think we need help. Like being a full-time working mom, you need help coming from somewhere. And I think recognizing and being okay to accept and get help is actually incredibly important.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so necessary, and there's a million things going on in our head at any one given moment, right? So whether it's work related, I feel like I barely sleep. I think I use some of those sequels, but it's funny, right? Because like you need that to quiet all the things that are going on, but you definitely need that support, and it is so different in terms of the balance in a household, I think now as it was 50 years ago. So it's pretty awesome.
That's such a great point. We just had some of our home care brands just came out with, how to change the chore gap. Right. And I think I know I'm off on a tangent, but that chore gap and changing that chore gap is like critical. Like anybody can help. I remember one of the first jobs I gave my son was to refill the toilet paper.
Oh,
Like no one likes refilling the toilet paper roll, right? It's always out. One of the first things that my little 2-year-old could do was refill the toilet paper. And it became, so anyway, but it's, the chore gap is really important. And I think for women that are working, finding that balance, that support, those systems, in again, whatever way it looks like for you, I just couldn't say enough about that.
I'm taking that as my biggest takeaway. I'm gonna start making my son change the toilet paper. And no, it's really, it's so true, because this is actually embarrassing to say this out loud, but it was just my 12th wedding anniversary, and I bought my husband, who I call like the ironing king, a steamer. That was my very romantic 12-year anniversary gift for him. So it's all about like, what can they do to help, and how
Right.
can you balance that? But I was going to actually ask, have you ever felt or like you struggled or felt conflicted about that balance between your career and personal life, or obviously with your husband being so supportive and able to help with home? Is it not?
Yes. No, yes. Like it, because I'm still mom, right? We're never not mom, no matter how much support we have. And, I took a early survey in my P&G days, and what came back on what drove me has stuck with me. And it was two things. It was balance and challenge. And that kind of defines me as a person. I love my work. I love my job. I love what I do at work, and I love my family, and I love being at home, and finding the balance between those is a constant struggle. And honestly, as my children have gotten older, it changes how that balance is found and what that balance looks like. And then challenge, like the fact that at work I can be challenged every single day on what's coming next, and not ever feel stagnant is like such an amazing opportunity. But I will say, one of my cheats is I look for twofers, like two things that you get out of.
Mm-hmm.
So for my children, like they were in sports or in theater. So one of the reasons I was a coach was because it then gave me an opportunity to be with my kids, have something fun, support my community in a way of volunteering. So it was just this added benefit of getting more than one thing. So instead of just sitting back and watching, I could actually be a part of the whole process and enjoy that. So I look for twofers all the time. Like, how do I combine things that I really want to do into something that becomes better?
I love that. I love that. My son's just getting into it, so maybe I'll take your advice. Although I think I might have to compete with my husband about who gets to be the coach. And I'm definitely not the hockey coach, because I cannot skate for the life of me.
Well, what's interesting about that too is when you're the coach, you have to be there, right? So back to that priority thing.
Yeah.
It's things that create the fact that you have to go. It's not optional. It's not, oh, maybe I don't see this game. It's like you have to go.
Yeah.
And I do think that women actually who don't have kids, like I think sometimes they feel like, wait, I don't get the excuse. And that's not right either, right? They should have every opportunity to do what they need to do and what's part of their life and what fulfills them, without necessarily having kids the reason they've got to go do it. So that's one of the things I actually, when I'm talking to some of the women in the workforce that don't have children, that not having that, no, I got to go do it because of my kids. Like, it can't be the only reason why women can have a balanced life.
I agree. And I think it really, like, it's actually interesting, because I think it has to come from the top down, right? Because to me, it was at my husband's company, but the best piece of advice I ever got was with open calendars. And now even more so, because, everybody's remote or semi-remote. But what I think is so interesting is like putting in things, whether it's like, I need to leave early, or I'm leaving at 3 p.m. today to make my daughter's travel soccer game in, XYZ, so that it gives you that balance, because you need it, right? Otherwise you're missing out on big, important things in their life or your own life too. So,
right.
There's always time. And I think also with the culture of phones and communication, we're able to have that constant balance if we need it.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast, and, one of the things it talked about was money is not your greatest resource, time is, right? How you choose to spend your time, where you choose to put your time, and making the conscious effort of how you spend your time, I think can be incredibly freeing and healthy.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice. Um, I did want to ask too, just like in terms of bigger challenges in your role and your career, since it is such a robust title, which means you're probably, running and managing a lot of teams and people. Do you have any like bigger challenges or things that you wanted to talk about in your career?
Yeah, I think, the first challenge was when I actually stepped out of line management. At P&G, being on the marketing brand side of things, I'm under Mark Pritchard. I report to Mark Pritchard and his organization. So being outside of now the traditional brand marketing line was a big deal. It was a big step, and making that choice was actually one of those important life decisions, because this job, I love this job. It's what I'm good at. And it's focused on advertising and communication and working with our agencies and like on the future of advertising. When Mark called and said, "Hey, I'd like you to lead this," like, talk about a challenge. It was uncharted. We weren't sure what we were going to do, wasn't sure on the path, but he was great, because Mark's point was, in that case, he's like, focus on the consumer problem we're solving, and then tell me what you need to do to solve it. It wasn't like, by this date, by this time. It was, help figure this out. And so that was probably the biggest challenge I ever had in my career, was saying yes to Mark on leading future of advertising. And for the last 4 years, I've put together a really passionate team of people who also want to help figure out what we need to be doing as a company and how we can better serve consumers, so that the experience is something they want to watch. That's, information, communication stories they want to watch and lean into, and improving that advertising experience. So that was probably the single biggest thing, because it was, uncharted, not clear, and kind of like, how do you do it? And the best way to do that is start to pull people in that you believe in and trust in, that don't think like you,
Yeah.
and start creating what could that look like, and what might that look like. And then the same thing has now happened with innovating on content and how we tell stories. It was like P&G 80 years ago, like, launched the soap operas on radio, right? And we're a part of that. We've been in film and in the entertainment industry for a while, but we're now getting back to it to say, okay, what does that look like now? And what's the business model for that look like? And how do we show up, especially when our brands have stories that they want to talk about that are beyond just the superior functioning of the product, but what the brand wants to stand for.
Yeah. As I said earlier, that's an easy role. You've got an easy, I can't imagine. It's amazing.
It's a lot of fun though.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I mean, and the cool thing about it, right, is like so many of your products are so universal. I was actually yesterday, I was like, just for fun, I'm going to go around and see like what P&G products I have, and I was like, I've always been a Tide girl. I only buy Charmin and Bounty, Downy, Febreze. I was like, I'm a Tampax, Crest. I mentioned before, my mom has me hooked on those Vicks sticks. And like Swiffer. I mean, literally, like I couldn't live without Swiffer with my 6-year-old. But I was thinking like I'm an advertisement for this panel, and you should just like follow me around. But I would be really curious to hear like what are some of your favorite brands, or maybe even your most purchased.
Yeah, you mentioned one of them. I mean, I've been working with Tide for 6 years now. I love the Tide brand. It is such a fabulous product. It's an amazing brand. The partnership we have right now with our agency at Woven and MMK, and what we're creating. So that's as a marketer, but as a human doing it. My husband actually does most of our laundry, so he's the stain man. He knows how to get out every stain much better than I do. So I test half the things with him. But I love Tide as a product. I love Tide as a brand. I also, I think Tampax Pearl and Always Infinity are like life-changing products for women. Like it makes a massive difference. I am a Charmin Blue person, and my Bounty Selected size, so I can just use like this much because I use it all the time.
Me too.
And then recently, things like SK2, I've been using Olay since I was, 20, and, SK2 is an amazing product. So I honestly, I'm a little bit like you. I feel like we better stop, because I could go on and on. I'm a P&G household because I believe in the products and the brands that we have, and I think they work really, really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, side note, I mean, your husband probably uses it, or maybe you do for your daughter. I think you said she plays soccer, but I'm telling you that the Tide Sport is life-changing. My husband runs like, and I don't know how, it's always like soaking wet. And I'm like, it gets the smell out, no problem. It's the best.
Well, and Tide Hygienic Clean is the one we just came out with, which is is even a deeper clean. So anyway.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out because I'm not gonna lie, I like stock up on the sport. So
Sport's great. It works.
so funny. So obviously P&G products we know we love, but like how would you say you're more influenced, like just like personally as a consumer? Are there like what affects your purchase decisions outside of maybe CPG specifically, but like any type of purchase decisions? Are there certain things that really influence you?
So I feel like because I am, P&G hardcore, like insights are what influence me as a consumer. When a brand like gets me, and understands what I need. I'm planning on a hike in the end of this month to the top of a mountain to sleep over in Tennessee. And it's going to be a little rigorous. And I needed to figure out, how do I get some of the right gear? So the store I actually went to was REI. Now, I'd never been to REI, right? But I knew of REI. I knew what they like. I've been getting messages from them for I don't know how many years. None of it worked until I had a need. But when I had a need, like I knew who to go to. And then the experience in the store was amazing. Like this, fitting the right backpack and trying it on and having the way, like, so it just made me recognize that it's not always the thing that happens day in and day out. Sometimes it's that equity that's been built.
It's true.
Clearly that's what REI did for me. So that's just an example where I feel like when brands really understand what problem they're solving and can share and talk with I think as people, we just respond to that.
Yeah. No, well, I think that it's also like that, the timeliness of when, those ads are served to you and how it's applicable to what's going on in your life at that moment too, for sure.
That's right. Absolutely. Recency
Yeah,
helps.
it's true. I mean, I could get a million emails from something that I bought 3 years ago, and then it's like, oops, wait, I do need it again, that kind of thing. So sometimes it is just staying in front of them as well. Would you say that like directs your decisions and your role? Do you tend to take a certain approach when you're thinking about brands? Like, is it important about like that timeliness? Is that what you guys go for? Or like point of sale? Is that important to you, or is it more generally, since it's so broad?
Yeah, I think, if we think about how P&G markets broadly, point of sale is critically important. Recency is very important. Having the equity in the minds of the consumer. We believe in advertising. We believe advertising works. And honestly, the way that social and influencers and word of mouth is also really powerful. So there's never a one size fits all for a brand. All of these tools are just the right tools at the right time, depending on what you're trying to say. As I look at the future of advertising and say, what are we focused on? We've actually gotten it to something that's pretty simple. We believe the future is all around being useful and being interesting. And if you can figure out as a brand how to be more useful or be more interesting, you'll win. And so that's, if I really look at what's affecting, how do we reach consumers new, it would be coming through that lens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are consuming content at a rate so fast, and it's also so fragmented, right? Platform preferences, and then your products are super universal. I was trying to think, I was saying this to someone actually the other day. We were talking about P&G internally, and it was just like, it's like a college kid needing to clean their dorm room. It doesn't matter. There's parents and or kids doing laundry, or, young parents buying diapers, men and women shaving, a woman's first period. And then like my grandpa, he still buys toilet paper, right? Like, so it's like, it's so applicable, it's so universal, and you do need to reach people in different ways. So it's kind of hard. And I was thinking just about like, are there anything out of the box that you guys are doing, or really more importantly, like, how do you measure success when you are so universal?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give two examples on the be more useful. We've actually gone back to some more educational advertising, how to use the products, microbrand and the importance of hygiene that everyone has right now. We found that going back to say, this is it. This is how you use it. This is how you spread, like very, almost blocking and tackling of how to use the product has been, really, because consumers feel like they're being given information as opposed to being sold to. So that's like going like, I don't, you could say that's going 50 years back, right? But it's what people need right now. On the other side of being interesting, I look at Charmin as toilet paper, and they CES a year ago when they came out with the roll bot, that was a robot that can bring you your toilet paper roll, speaking of refilling, or that we just did a Charmin BRB bot, like Be Right Back bot, where we created this, on a Zoom call, you could pre-record, AI of your face and have that react as people were talking, right? This is the brand is just leaning into better bathroom experiences in a fun, interesting way, right? So I think those are what helps brands be interesting. Tampax has actually just done something in the gaming. They were talking about gaming and influencers, like in the gaming world, because women are so underrepresented, but yet are looking for brands to support them, and had a really honest conversation about periods and tampon use in the gaming ecosystem. So, or with gamers. So there's so many opportunities right now for brands to find ways to authentically connect with consumers. And it's just a matter of knowing who you are as a brand and what you want, and who you're trying to talk with, and finding places where that can create a shared moment, a shared vision, mission, or job.
That's awesome. That's hilarious. Also, we at Studio71, we actually have a lot of gamers and esports content within our platform, and it's funny because it is, when you look at the stats, like women are heavily represented in the gaming space from a content consumption standpoint, but nobody ever talks about that. So that is really interesting. Are there any media or social media platforms that you and maybe your team are interested in for the future?
The furthest one out I'll go, instead of the closest one, is where the virtual worlds are growing, right? So Upland was one that I just got on, although I lost all my retail, my real estate, because I didn't get on every day. But it's like, it's this whole new, like, we look at Roblox and what the kids, what the Gen Alphas are doing, and virtual merchandise is something that they're spending their allowance on, right? They're not going and getting candy or buying Pokemon cards, right? They're buying V-merch. So that's a really interesting future space that I think we're going to see a lot more of. So not current platforms or traditional ones, but I think one of the places where it's going.
That's awesome. I'm never giving my child allowance. No, I'm just kidding. I thought we might pivot a little bit just in the essence of time, but as a woman in leadership, being at such a large CPG company, I thought it might be interesting. How about like the best advice you've ever gotten?
Yeah, the best advice is you can do everything, just not all at the same time. And we've talked about this. Like, there's been times where I've had to lean into my career and done a ton of travel, and I wasn't home a lot, and my kids were like, where are you now? Like, they had no idea where I was at, right? But it was that time in that moment that I had to do that. Then there's other times where I had to pull back and say, you know what, my family matters right now. Like, I took a 3-month sabbatical as my son was graduating from high schools, and we went to China for 3 weeks as a family. And it was just like, that's what I needed to do right then with the transition that our family was going through. So I think sometimes it's micro, like it's this weekend to that week, right? It doesn't necessarily be huge parts of your career, but that's the best advice, is trying to do everything. Then, your work is too high and your family's too high and you're just stressed out, and then both of them crash. And that happens still, even trying to manage priorities. But that was the best advice I got. And I think the second one I'd give you, and this was some women's leadership training that I took recently, was, for women, often we don't internally tell our own story, right? We're not as good as pitching ourselves, as talking about ourselves, as representing ourselves. And one of the biggest things was to find ways to tell your own story. Don't assume someone's going to talk for you. I mean, you put your head down and get your work done, yes, but then tell your story. Tell what you've done. Take credit for what you've done in a way that, is to your boss or to whomever you have to do that. So I think it's sometimes very hard for women to do that. And then the final one I'll give, that was actually part of that same training, was change the voice in your head. Sometimes our voice can be really critical of ourselves. And, if you change your voice, you change your mindset. And so how do you change the voice to not all the things you're not doing, but all the, like, hey, that worked, or I could do that, or this is how do we change that voice in our head so it's not critical and taking us down, but something that's helping us step forward and lean in?
Oh, I love those. I'm glad this is recorded. I'm taking them all myself. It's funny. I actually, personally, this is like a little tangent. Before studio, so I was in media my whole career. Before Studio71, I took a little hiatus and went to a company called The Second Shift. I didn't have flexible, but the idea was make work for you and give women, part-time project-based work. So they never stepped out or felt like they had to totally step back during, really difficult and pivotal times in their life. Because some companies are not, like, to be perfectly honest, the fact that P&G gave you that sabbatical is incredible, right? Like, more companies need to be leaning into that type of offering, especially when you've been there and you've shown that you're absolutely loyal and love the company, the brand, the career trajectory that you've been given. But I think that that's so important because it's hard, right? Like, there's always that conflict, like we were talking about earlier, and whether or not you're a mom or you're just a person, so you just anybody kind of needs that balance. And I think that's pretty amazing that they gave you that opportunity. I want to hear lots about China. And then I guess, to kind of wrap up before we get into questions, is there, in terms of equality, I know we were talking about your promotion recently. Again, huge congratulations. It's amazing. Not only the title, but, leading content innovation. Like, what does that mean? I think, the audience might like to hear about, like, how your team is structured and what they're doing, and then, what you're kind of thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've said a little bit, like, P&G is known to be, Mark has been talking a lot about constructive disruption, right? And this is one of the ways to do it. And, at P&G Studios, as we're calling it, we're looking to create stories that people want to hear about with partners in the industry, whether it's comedic or film or entertainment or journalism, that we could work with creatively and come up with stories that are sellable. Sellable content. So, a great example of this is The Cost of Winning that Gillette did with the Story Lab that went to HBO as one of their best sports content. And this was something that was connected with Gillette, and, raising the next generation of men is part of their mission and mantra. So we have these citizenship focus, our brands have these ambitions, and we see these stories and content and partnerships in the entertainment industry as a way to create new, interesting storytelling that's worthy of being on the streaming platforms and the channels to be viewed by consumers or by viewers who are looking for interesting storytelling that connects with what they're interested in. So, we're looking at how we and that's like in the content side. We're also creating platforms and shows like Can't Cancel Pride as a part of Pride Month, and it was a whole piece of it was a content and performance with iHeart that we executed against to create a moment in time where our brands could tell their stories, but also we could support the LGBTQ community. We were just in Tribeca and won Best Short Doc with Coded, which is also a film about LGBTQ visibility. So we're really trying to put the consumer first on how do we create stories they want to watch, right? They want to lean into, that authentically are part of what we believe is important, and stories that we think as a company we want to tell or that brands want to tell.
I love that. So I think we have about 9 minutes left. We have a couple of questions, so I'm going to throw them out. One, I like this one. If you could give your younger self a piece of career advice, what would it be?
It's a great question. I think my biggest advice would be do the scary stuff if it's something you really believe in. I think we can, when we're in a career, it's like, oh, what are they going to feel about me? Or what are they going to think about me? Or what if I fail? Or what if I can't do that? I would say do the scary stuff, do the things but because you think you might love it. Because you think you're like, I might love this, but maybe it's not the track that most people take, or maybe it's something that's undefined, or maybe it's something where you have to create it. But that's where you're going to get that's what I would be saying. Like, that's where my most interesting values have come from. That's where I feel most valued when I've done those things. And when I've played it safe or done what's expected, I think I always felt more disappointed in myself.
That's so true. I mean, and it's hard, right? Like it's okay to fail. I feel like the last session was talking a little bit about that too. Like if we were all perfect, we would never get anything done. And it's awesome to try something new and just see, what happens. All right, I have more. You got a lot of questions coming at you. So the next one, P&G has been a leader in cause-related messaging. I know we were just talking about some of that around social justice and representation. Seems the next challenge is moving to cruelty-free products. Any thoughts on how P&G plans to tackle that?
You know what, I would say I'm not the best person to answer that question. I know it's something that we have a lot of conscientious people who are working on that, and it's a really important part of how P&G and our research and development organization thinks. I wouldn't be the best person to be able to give the best answer on that.
Fair. This one might be interesting. So how, if at all, have like emerging D2C personal care brands affected P&G's business and marketing strategies? I know, there's all the, I'm going to call them Instagram brands that are happening that, so has that really affected your business or strategies at all?
It's definitely affected our strategies. And this is one of the things I really love about P&G is competition gets us going. Like it makes us better. And so what's really happened inside P&G is we've put a much more concerted effort against innovating in a different way. We call it lean innovation. Like how do we learn quickly, fail fast? We now have founders that create products within our company that can put out products that they believe in. We have innovation labs that are set up in every category that have these founders that are identifying breakthrough technology or ideas or products that they want to put forward. So it's actually created a whole new ecosystem for us on how we think about innovation. It's also caused us from a marketing standpoint to really figure out DTC, closed loop, how do we connect that data? How do we create that longer term relationship with the consumers? The importance of first party data. So it's honestly had a tremendous impact on how we think as a company. Some of our brands have had harder times than others with it, Gillette being one of them. But for us, we believe competition makes you stronger and helps you learn. And so that's how we approach it. It's like, where do we need to build a capability? Where do we need to win? Where's the new area that we need to make sure that our brands are capable and our marketers are able to do? And we now even have an entrepreneur track where people can lean into that if that's what they're more interested in. So it's expanded our horizons and made us think differently.
Yeah. And I mean, having that type of track too, it might be interesting from like an acquisition standpoint too, right? So like if there's a brand out there that's really on your radar or solves a challenge that maybe one of your products doesn't in the exact same way, it's a reason to, put it together in the portfolio. That's awesome.
Yeah. Bevel is a good example of that, right? It's a Black focused shaving brand, and it's been a great add to our company and has enriched us greatly. So yes, we're definitely looking out and doing that with these smaller brands.
Awesome. All right. I think this might be our last one, but are there any changes in marketing adopted during the pandemic that you think your team will continue to use in this hopefully post-pandemic world as we start to get back to normal? And do you expect any certain consumer behaviors for specific brands that may, have changed to remain that same way?
That's a loaded question, could probably be answered over 10 minutes. The first one is what's changed in marketing. Like, I do think there are obviously we've learned that we can work from home. Like no one was sure we could work from home and be as efficient. And we figured out, yes, we can. It can work. There's downsides, but it can work. I think we're seeing that the ramp up of click to buy, of e-commerce and shopping it's transformational. Use of QR codes. Like QR codes have been around for forever, and yet now they're kind of universally used. So you don't have to touch menus. So we see a lot of consumer habits that have been changed or made. Gaming is a habit that I don't think is going to change, that people got into it. Virtual experiences, as opposed to having to have just immersive live experiences, have totally taken off and create a whole bunch of opportunities like this, right? So, we now do training where before I might have 50 people in a room, and now I have 600 across the world because we just didn't think about doing it virtually. So I mean, I just listed off a bunch. I could go on, but yes, it has been transformational. I think there's things that we'll never go back to. And I do think consumer habits and practices have changed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is really interesting to see like how, various industries are going back in a different way. And then also just, that expectation of what, the new normal is across. But we did similarly, we had a sales offsite where we never usually have our UK office join. And it was great. It was, a bit tricky from a time perspective, coordinating LA to UK, but, we figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think that maybe I'll give it another second if there's any other questions, but I think that might be all, Ryan.
Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for the time. Thank you for chatting with me. It was great.
Oh, it was awesome. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us today. It's crazy how fast, doesn't it go like this? Or is it just me? Like, hey, 40 minutes go by and then we're on to the next one. Would love to have spent.
Did I do it right?
No, that was terrific. And thank you for the audience sending in some questions too. That's always amazing. But seriously, thank you both for being here. And Kristin, you did a great job of carrying us through that conversation. Kimberly, thank you for your insights as well.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Well, we have another conversation coming up here for our Women in Marketing event, and it's actually pretty cool. I get to introduce one of my coworkers here at Brand Innovators, who's going to be driving us through this next conversation. And we have, I guess I'll start out with Michelle Edgar, who's the founder and CEO of the XX Project, here with us. And